Hello and welcome. Early this week, there was one good news amidst the bad news on economic front, especially in the defense sector. And that was India's imports have fallen by over 33% in two periods of 2011 to 2015 and 2016 to 2020. That's big news as far as India's defense sector is concerned. It's a result of various defense and national security reforms that have been carried out since 2014 under the NDA government, which came to power in May 2014. That's the subject of this week's Simply Nitin. I'm Nitin Gokhale. The vulnerability of the Indian Defence Forces to the dependence they have had on arms imports from abroad has been flagged for several years now. But one good news about the dip in the imports should not make India complacent. Although national security reforms has been a mantra with this current government under Narendra Modi, it has a long way to go. But some of the steps that have been taken to overcome the problems of not just imports, but also fast-tracking procedures, making it easier for local MSMEs and Indian defense companies to make products and also supply it to the Indian armed forces is just one part of the defense reforms. National security reforms are much larger. And many of you will remember that about 2 years ago, I had spoken about how the National Security Council Secretariat, which is an advisory body, used to be an advisory body to the Prime Minister's office, has now got teeth because it has now become a regular department of the Government of India, and how it was expanded to include a more cohesive, more all-encompassing objectives to look at comprehensive national security, not just security in terms of external borders and internal security. So, under the National Security Advisor, there are now 3 Deputy National Security Advisors, 1 military advisor, and an expanded staff that does research, that monitors developments in space, in cyber, in innovation, in defense sector, and recommends a number of reforms and number of steps that India must take to make not just the armed forces, but the Cyber Defense Agency, the Space Agency, the DRDO, the ISRO, all of them responsive as well as innovative. Now, under the NSA, the 3 deputy NSAs have 3 distinct portfolios to look after. There is Mr. Rajinder Khanna, who is the deputy NSA and secretary of the NSCS. He looks after critical technologies, including 5G, cyber defense, cyber offensive operations, and of course, future technologies that he coordinates with various agencies. There is Mr. Pankaj Saran, a former diplomat, who looks after strategic issues and maritime issues that concerns India and that India has to look after as far as the Indian Ocean region and the Indo-Pacific is concerned. The 3rd Deputy NSA looks after internal security and police reforms, coordinates with various intelligence agencies, and of course keeps a watch on what's happening internally in within India's borders. The military advisor, the post that has been revived since 2018, is the go-between the NSCS and the 3 armed forces or the Ministry of Defense. He is the one who looks after the future technologies in the military segment, liaises with DRDO, also looks at what are the needs that are required, and also looks at defense reforms, advises the NSA, who in turn advises the Prime Minister's office. So that is the broader reform that has happened at the higher strategic level. In defense itself, there have been many instances of defense reforms that have been put in place. In 2014, Prime Minister Modi announced the intention to do Make in India as a flagship program, not just for defense, but for other sectors as well. But since 2016, when the defense procurement procedure was revised, it was rewritten, ease of doing business was introduced in defense segment, and one new category of procurement called IDDM, indigenously designed, developed and manufactured products, were given preference for the armed forces to procure from Indian MSMEs and Indian companies. Then, of course, and the whole idea of all this was to reduce the dependence of imports from even good friends, good old friends like Russia, and newfound friends like the Americans. They have been supplying critical defense equipment to India for some time now, but the vulnerability was sought to be reduced, because during critical times like post Uri or post Balakot or post Pulwama and Balakot, and in 2020, when the Chinese showed a lot of aggression on the Ladakh border, then India needed to go out and buy critical equipment, ammunition, supplies, radars, UAVs. That vulnerability India seeks to reduce through this national defense reforms as well as national security reforms. The events over the past 4 or 5 years was a reminder that India needs to be self-sufficient. Therefore, in 2020, Atmanirbhar Bharat was a slogan and was a program that was adopted by the government of India, and defense forms a very critical part of that Atmanirbhar campaign. Now, an interministerial defense planning committee was set up, as all of you know, under the National Security Advisor, called the DPC, in 2018, where 3 service chiefs, the CDS, secretaries of defense, finance and external affairs were also included to give advice and to plan acquisitions as well as the long-term perspective plan for arming the defense forces. Similarly, in May 2020, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, in the midst of the pandemic, the Corona-19 pandemic, announced several far-reaching reforms in defense. The first list of negative imports, that means a list of items that may not be imported, was promulgated. It will be gradually expanded. So many of these platforms will now be indigenously sourced, done by Indian companies, manufactured in India. That was done. That includes missiles, light combat aircraft, artillery guns, radars, electronic warfare equipment, and armored vehicles. The enhanced limit of foreign direct investment under the automatic route to 74% has also given a boost to domestic producers who can get finance from outside, but the skills can come from within the country because there is enough expertise available in all this. Corporatization of ordnance factories is one of the key elements of defense reforms, national security reforms, because the ordnance factories so far, 42 of them, if I am not mistaken, are not really responsive to the needs of the armed forces. Corporatization will give them the power and the ability to deliver on time and deliver quality products. Hopefully, that will happen very soon. Similarly, space-based technologies are being given importance. Weapons directed from space are being developed using artificial intelligence, remote sensing satellites, remote military targets, focus on UAVs, anti-drone systems, has all become a key objective for the 3 defense forces as well as the national security planners. Similarly, a defense space agency was created in 2018. In March 2019, the anti-satellite test was successfully carried out, as we all know. India has become just a handful of few countries to have that ability to shoot down a satellite in space when required. I think India is only the 4th country after US, China, and Russia. Similarly, the ability to ward off major cyber attacks from inimical elements, especially from China, both state and non-state actors, needs a coordinated effort. And therefore, the Defense Cyber Agency, which will coordinate with the National Cyber Security Coordinator, who sits in the National Security Council Secretariat under the NSA, will go a long way to protect India's critical infrastructure in the cyberspace. Remember, it is easy for anybody sitting outside the country to cripple India's critical systems like railways, banking, power grids, even atomic power stations, all that, if India is not careful. And therefore, it's a very critical area that requires uh, constant upgrade and constant research and development. So all these form part of what is called national security reforms. I spoke about defense reforms largely, but there are also cyber security reforms, there are space security reforms, and also the ability to cohesively act. Intelligence agencies today are working as one unit because it requires somebody to coordinate their inputs, and the ability to discern the inimical designs of India's adversaries, including China and Pakistan, is something that India needs to acquire going forward, and it needs to be real time. Now, those reforms are in the offing. Large scale automation, Internet of Things, and of course, the National Security Committee for identifying critical network security, that is the telecom security, where sourcing of the equipment has to be only from trusted sources, which means companies like Huawei and ZTE, which are Chinese companies, Chinese fronts of the Communist Party of China, need to be kept out. Now, the formation and the notification of that reform, where it is now said that all this will be done after scrutiny by the National Security Committee, which will look at the source from where the technology is coming, will mean that India will be less vulnerable to any backdoor entry by these companies which belong to China or the Chinese Communist Party. So several reforms are being carried out behind the scene. Many of them are not spoken. India is also now developing and manufacturing nuclear submarines on its own by sourcing some technology, developing some other technology by itself, and then practicing it. One nuclear submarine, indigenously designed, developed, and manufactured, is already in the Indian Navy service. 2 more are under trials, various stages of trials, and 3 more are already planned. Now, this is not something that will happen overnight, but the process has begun, and the fact that Sipri, the Stockholm Institute of Peace and Research, International Institute of Peace and Research, has actually said that India has reduced its imports, defense imports or weapons imports, by 33%, is very good news, but India needs to build on this. And I remember former Defense Minister Manohar Parrikar for this, because in 2016, in an interview to me, he had mentioned that if I can get imports reduced every year by 10%, I'll be happy that if we can come down to the ratio of 70% indigenous production, 30% imports, that will be the day when I'll be very happy. And I think India is moving towards it. The current dispensation in the Defense Ministry, the National Security Establishment, everyone is working towards it. That's some good news, and which is now showing results. India is also aiming to do exports from India, Indian defense sector. $5 billion by 2024 is supposed to be the export volume. And hopefully, Indian companies will rise up to the occasion and do this. So that's what I wanted to actually tell all of you, that a lot of work is happening behind the scene, under the radar, not known to many people. So I thought I'll just flag this, because this is something that we should be proud about. So that was the episode on Simply Nitin. Of course, I will keep coming back with some historical facts, some historical incidents, some anniversaries to be flagged, all that in this weekly program. Do keep watching us on StratNews Global. Keep subscribing to our YouTube channel, and of course, do send feedback, because that is something that we need from you so that we can improve every time we do these episodes. Until the next time, it's goodbye.